From NJ.com, this is Talk is Cheap, a New York Giants podcast. We're talking Big Blue football all year round.
Welcome on in, Giants fans, to episode 157 of the Talk is Cheap podcast right here on NJ.com. As always, I'm Matt Lombardo, joined by my friend and colleague Ryan Dunleavy. And Ryan, a new year, but much of the same for the Giants, both in terms of the outcome of their first week of the regular season and in a lot of ways how the Giants got there and the question marks that still remain heading into week two. We're going to recap week one against Dallas, look ahead a little bit to week two against the Buffalo Bills in the home opener. But you just look at last year's team and the inability to pressure the quarterback, the inconsistency of the passing game, games where Saquon Barkley just disappeared, and it seems like all of those things came back to rear their ugly head against Dallas.
Pat Shurmur said that 2019 could be a continuation of the end of 2018, the last 8 weeks or so of 2018. Well, you know what it looked like? A continuation of the first 8 weeks of 2018, like a step backwards to when they were getting blown out and the offense was struggling. It looked like the wrong part of 2018 carried over.
Yeah, it really did. And of course, if you're tuning into this podcast, you're obviously a big fan of the Giants, and we would love if you would log into the Apple Podcast Store and leave us a 5-star review if you like what you hear. Let us know what you'd like to hear differently, and of course, subscribe in the Apple Podcast Store, in iTunes. Give us a like on YouTube. Check us out on iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. And of course, on Twitter, check out the show at TalkIsCheapNYG. Ryan is at RY Dunleavy, and I'm at Matt Lombardo NFL. Let's just pick up right there, Ryan. You talked about the continuation of the second half of last year. The one positive that I took away from the game.
There was a positive?
There are a lot of negatives to dive into, which we will do, believe me. The one positive is I think that the offensive line success at the end of last year carried over to week one. Even if the Giants didn't run the ball much, all five graded either 62 or above in run blocking, according to Pro Football Focus. Nate Solder graded out with a 70.5, I believe it was, the
which
best
is actually
grade
pretty
along the
good,
line.
right? Yeah, like relatively speaking. I think if you're not a Pro Football Focus guy, you hear 70, you think that's a D+ on my science test or whatever. That actually, that's not bad. That's like a pretty average offensive line.
Yeah, anything above 60 to 61 is a pretty good day at the office for these guys, according to PFF. And you saw Saquon Barkley averaged 11 yards per carry. And even if you take away the 59-yard run, and I know that people love to play that game of take away the biggest play and factor in how the player's doing, he still averaged 5.9 yards per carry on his other 10 carries. So obviously they didn't run the ball enough, but I think that if you're looking to build on something, and we're going to tear this team down in a lot of ways, but if you're looking to build on something, it's that he's not going to have to create all on his own, and the offensive line is probably about what everybody expected it to be after all of the changes over the offseason.
Yeah, and I don't think they did a bad job in pass protection either. I mean, there were a couple hits. I remember Lawrence smacking Eli Manning in the face once, but most of the hits Eli took, I thought, were when they rolled him out of the pocket, and Shurmur and I disagree there. I don't know that Eli Manning should be rolling out of the pocket. So I know he had some success with it last year, but if you roll your quarterback out of the pocket for two reasons. One, if he's super mobile and can run, Eli can't.
Right.
Two, if you don't trust your offensive line like last year and you're trying to buy time. You trust this offensive line. Keep him in the freaking pocket.
Yeah, and I think that's where Eli Manning, in a lot of ways during his career was at his best. It's when he had a clean pocket to work with, and that you saw that again last week, that his passer rating from a clean pocket was significantly higher than it was against pressure, and that's going to be a lot different than the quarterback the Giants face in week two, because Josh Allen is actually better and more productive against the blitz and against pressure than he is in a clean pocket. But last week against the Cowboys, not the story for Manning. From the pocket, 107 was his passer rating. Under pressure, 50.7. Wow. So that just goes to show you the importance of the offensive line. They need to do their job, and it's not going to get easier on Sunday afternoon. But sticking with week one, Ryan, let's look at the passing offense and what didn't work.
The passing offense and what didn't work?
In general, the offense. Third down, 2 of 12. Not going to get it done there. Play calling.
Saquon Barkley went 12 minutes, I think, of game time between the second and third quarters without a touch. That's inexplicable. That was inexplicable last year when you had Odell Beckham. When he's 85% of your offense. That is, I mean, he needs 25, 30. We were talking about 400 touches.
Yeah.
We were talking about 400 touches as this year for Saquon Barkley. He got 15 in the first game. Not enough.
Yeah, you're not going to get to 400 touches with 15 touches per game, and especially when I believe only 8 of those 15 touches came after the second quarter or midway through the second quarter.
And I don't want to hear that it was a blowout and you have to start passing, because it was only 21-7 with a whole half of football remaining when he started to disappear. They started to go away from him. That's not a 14-point game with a half remaining is not a blowout.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that we can hone in, and everybody's picked out the 2 play calls in the first quarter, or the third quarter rather.
One 2 play series in the first quarter, 1 in the third quarter.
Yeah, and the one that really, I think, jumps off the page and makes you really question the upside in terms of Pat Shurmur as a play caller is the 3rd and 2, 4th and 1 sequence where you have Saquon Barkley in the backfield, arguably the best running back in the league. You hand it to Eli Penny on a fullback dive, and then the second play on 4th and 1, rather than just put the ball in Saquon Barkley's gut and not overthink it and trust him to get that 1 yard, which, by the way, is what you drafted him number 2 overall to do, and passed on the Sam Darnolds and the Josh Allens and the other quarterbacks that were taken last year.
Josh Allen he had a chance to be a starter.
He had a chance, according to Pat Shurmur. Had a chance to maybe be a starter in this league. But that's why you drafted Saquon. And instead, the play that you alluded to, Ryan, you rolled out Eli Manning on a naked bootleg.
Yeah.
I wrote about it, and I tweeted that that's the one play where I think Daniel Jones makes a difference in that game because of his mobility. He probably beats Jalen Smith to the yard marker. But just talk about that series of events where you're down in scoring territory, deep in the red zone, and you come away with no points because of 2 terrible back-to-back play calls.
It just doesn't make any sense because if you remember, I think it might have been the same series. Pat Shurmur went for it on 4th and 8 from the 45-yard line, an obvious punting situation, and he went for it on 4th and 8. Benny Fowler made a really nice sideline catch, dragged his foot. So Pat Shurmur was being aggressive. He was being aggressive. And then he got inside the 10-yard line, and he stopped being aggressive. He went to Eli Penny. I mean, it didn't make any sense. Okay, you clearly are aware your defense is struggling. We need to score some points. We can't be punting and field goals. And then you're down there, and you're playing for 6 inches at a time.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and a lot of people, and we're going to believe me, dissect every aspect of this defense that left a lot to be desired, which is putting it kindly against Dallas. But the one area where I think the offense could have helped the defense is putting together more sustained drives.
Yeah, by running the ball.
Exactly. Running the ball, playing some sort of ball control offense, just converting third downs. If you run the ball effectively with Saquon Barkley on 1st and 2nd down, chances are you're staring down the pike at 3rd and 3 most times, right?
Here's what I don't understand, Matt. The Giants built this football team like it's 1995, okay? They invest in the offensive line, invest the number 2 pick in the running back, playing with a fullback when half the NFL doesn't even believe in a fullback anymore. I happen to believe in one. I agree. You should have a fullback. I agree with that. But
you're kind of a fullback guy.
Yeah.
I could see you lining up in a Mike Allstott, type of role.
Yeah, I have a flip phone. I'm an old school guy. But so anyway, my point being, you built this team to be a power 1990s football team, and then you came out your first game and you played 75% of your offense in 3 wide situations where
you traded away your best receiver over the offseason.
You traded your best receiver over the offseason. Your strength is Ellison and Ingram in heavy 2 tight end sets. Ellison and Ingram, or one of the other with Eli Penny, some sort of combination of 2 fullbacks, 2 fullbacks and tight ends, and then you ended up playing the game in a 2019 3 wide set.
Yeah.
That's not what you built your team for. If you built your team for that, then you should have get rid of Eli Penny and get rid of Red Ellison and go get a real slot receiver to play.
Which they tried to do with Golden Tate. Let's be fair about this.
No, they didn't No, they didn't really try. Golden Tate replaces Odell Beckham. If you want to play 3 wide, have Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, and Odell Beckham. Then you can play with 3 wide. You know what I mean? Even if Golden Tate was healthy and everybody was healthy, if you turned injuries off, it would have been like Corey Coleman in that set. That's still not. I can make a case Red Ellison's better.
Yeah.
Put your best players on the field. You don't have enough talent to sit your best players. Your best lineup is probably Ingram, Ellison, Shepard, Latimer, Barkley. Put them on the field.
Yep, there's your skill set. That's who should be out there. And you should go heavy for 85% of the snaps because that's what you were built to do. And especially if you're going to carry Eli Penny on the roster, I agree with that. Now, let's turn the page to the defense because that's
Are we going to spend a lot of time on the defense?
That's what everybody's talking about. That's what you and I were talking about in Dallas.
That's what I was talking about in February.
Yeah, no, you're right. And you were ahead of the curve on this because just as Alec Ogletree came out right before training camp and left us all scratching our heads suggesting that this could be a top 10 defense, you've been spot on with this. This could be a bottom 3 defense in the league. They can't generate pressure. They had the least amount of pressures in the NFL. That's despite blitzing more than they were the 7th highest blitz percentage in the league.
I didn't know this stat.
On Sunday. ESPN.com, their Bills writer had that in the story today. So they blitzed more than all but 6 teams in the NFL, generated 0 pressures.
That's jarring.
The only 3 quarterback hits on Dak Prescott came when he was trying to scramble. They didn't hit him in a passing situation.
I wish everybody could see the look on my face right now. You just told me information I didn't know. I'm jarred by that stat.
I have to pick your jaw off the floor here.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, that's Ryan's jaw getting snapped into place.
Yeah.
So they blitzed
right
more
next
than
to the
most
Cheerios,
teams.
my kid dropped on the floor.
They blitzed more than most teams in the league and couldn't get home, and they couldn't cover. And what have you been saying? What did you say all last podcast?
There's 2 ways to play defense in the NFL. You rush the passer with JPP and OC, or you play suffocating second, or you play suffocating defense in the secondary,
which they couldn't do.
Correct. They can't do either.
So again, we talk about
and their linebackers can't cover tight ends.
Couldn't cover you. We talk about on offense putting your best players on the field and doing what you're built to do. James Betcher is the defensive coordinator. During his time in Arizona, he had the 2nd highest blitz percentage of any coordinator over that span. So they should be built to blitz, right? But last year, they generated only 30 sacks, the 2nd fewest in the league. They blitzed on Sunday, couldn't get home, and this is all happening while Alec Ogletree is biting on a play-action fake to a running back not named Ezekiel Elliott that lands up with Blake Jarwin catching a touchdown right over his head.
4 career touchdowns, all against the Giants.
All against the Giants, and we have Antoine Bethea at safety watching this happen, and there were a couple of times, I believe, on the Witten touchdown being one of them, where Bethea's not even in the frame, even though it's over the middle of the field. So I'll ask you this, Ryan, with Josh Allen coming to town and based on what we saw with Dak Prescott having a perfect passer rating and passing for 178 yards against the Giants blitzes, how do they get better here?
Look, I don't know how they get better. Here's how they could win this game. Josh Allen isn't very accurate. That's the knock on him as a passer before the draft. It's the knock on him in the NFL now. He's got a big arm. He's mobile. He can beat you with his feet, which you don't expect. He's not tremendously accurate. So if his passes are, I think the reason the Giants got off the field on Dak Prescott's first series before he started carving them up was there was a drop or something on a 3rd down in front of the sticks when the guy would have had room to run for a 1st down. They're going to need him to make mistakes, basically. That's what they're going to need. They're going to need Josh Allen to play to his weaknesses, and then I think they have a chance. If Josh Allen plays well, I don't think they can win the game.
Yeah, and I wrote about this for Thursday morning, that when you look at Josh Allen, he's actually much more efficient under pressure and against the blitz than he is from the pocket.
Yeah.
So if the Giants are going to blitz him, which seems to be James Betcher's philosophy, this is probably not the week to do it.
Let me ask you this, because I got asked this on Twitter quite a bit. Who's to blame for the defense right now? Is it Gettleman for not getting the right personnel? Is it Betcher for not adjusting his scheme to his talent, or is it the players?
I think it comes down to Dave Gettleman because, and I wrote about this, I believe this is a very flawed team top to bottom, but it's especially flawed on defense because you bring in a defensive coordinator who is a blitzkrieg kind of guy, get after the quarterback, turn up the heat, blitz, and you trade away Olivier Vernon, who's your best pass rusher, who is probably a rotational or high-end pass rusher on a lot of teams in the NFL, maybe not necessarily a 3-down pass rusher. And over the offseason, your big addition is a 3rd-round pick. Now, O'Shane Ximenez might develop into a player, but he's not a player who's going to be someone who can play 40-plus snaps per game and give you constant pressure on the quarterback. To me, you didn't do enough to to address that. You look at the secondary. You tried with DeAndre Baker, and maybe he's going to be a player, but he had a ball go over his head, and it seemed like Dak Prescott was looking where Janoris Jenkins was and then looking over to see where he wasn't and throwing it at Baker or Antonio Hamilton, who somehow is high enough on the depth chart to get on the field because, oh, by the way, you didn't get enough help at cornerback, right? Your front three can't generate a front three push, which we talked about going into the game is a big concern. So, yeah, I mean, and from my perspective, I don't know if you agree with this or not, I think it's on Gettleman that if you hired this particular coordinator, you need to give him the caliber of players to run his scheme, and they're just efficient at almost every level.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's mostly to blame. He sat in front of us on January 2nd and said the number one priority would be getting defensive playmakers, and he didn't do it. And 2 years ago, he sat in front of us and said he was going to fix the offensive line. Well, he struck out his first time fixing the offensive line. It took him till year 2. Now we think he's fixed it. So now if you work with that same timeline, he said he would get defensive playmakers for this year. Probably going to strike out and probably have to get them next year when they have $60-something million of cap space. Right. Probably get you some defensive playmakers then.
When most of the league, they're like 15th in cap space at that point.
Yeah,
so,
they'll be able to get a player to like they should have done this year with a Preston.
Zadarius Smith or Preston Smith, one of those big-time rushers.
The Packers.
Yep.
I'll say this. People who are killing James Bettcher, it's not his schemes, because when he had Tyrann Mathieu,
Patrick
Peterson, and Chandler Jones, he did pretty good.
Yeah.
So maybe it's Gettleman, maybe it's the players. Look,
but who picks the players?
Correct. Maybe it's week 1, and maybe these guys are all going to be pretty good, and that was just a case of jitters. But I'd be very worried about this, Matt. It's week 1, right? I know we'll take everything with a grain of salt. It's week 1. Everything the media has said pretty much has come true, right? And the number one thing that we asked when they picked Dexter Lawrence was, this guy you just picked over Montez Sweat, and you have this huge hole at pass rusher, and you just picked Dexter Lawrence, who's basically Snacks, who you traded away for a 5th-round pick. So you traded away an all-pro for a 5th-round pick, and then used a 1st-round pick on a less proven version of the same guy.
A top 20 pick. Pick 17 in the draft.
Yeah. On the same guy when you have a huge hole at pass rusher. Oh, no, Dexter Lawrence is a pass rusher. He's a 3-down player. He's not a 2-down player.
Rome wasn't built in a day, sweetheart.
Don't be fooled by I'm not just talking about Gettleman. Shermer, too, said this. Bettcher said this.
Yeah.
Don't be fooled by his size. He can rush the passer. Well, he played 28 defensive snaps, so he's a 2-down player.
Which is what we thought he would be.
Which is what I thought he would be. So you don't have a pass rusher, because now you're taking him out and you're putting in more linebackers, and you just lost a linebacker. Kareem Martin is on IR. So you left yourself too short-handed. You did it again. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think that at every level there are question marks, and we've talked about this leading up to the game. We talked about this in terms of building the defense.
I did a who's who. I did a who's on first of the Giants defense before the game. I did because there were so many question marks that it reminded me of the famous who's on first, what's on second, I don't know who's on third. That's what the Giants defense is to me. It's could be at linebacker, what if at safety, maybe at defensive tackle. That's what the whole thing is.
Yeah, and I think that we talked about this during one of the many training camp previews that was lost into space.
You think we're smart enough to pull off a who's found first? Are we funny enough to do that?
I'd have to practice because I'm not naturally funny.
There's no chance for that.
We'd have to rehearse it a few times.
A few times. No chance. Those guys, that's one of the greatest things I've ever seen.
Oh, it really is. But we talked about this on one of the many podcasts that is lost into the ethosphere of lost audio.
Yeah.
This is a bridge year for the defense, and you counted on your offense being what was going to keep you in games and keep you competitive. And I think we saw that and what it's going to look like this year. I mean, you're going to have to win games 41-35.
Correct.
Because this team isn't getting off the field defensively. Too many question marks, every level, linebacker, pass rusher, defensive lineman, secondary.
Oh, and by the way...
And maybe in 2 years they'll be pretty good.
Yeah. Yes, no, I agree with that. I think then should you have a chance? They built for the future.
Correct.
But just say you built for the future. Can't anybody admit that it's a rebuilding time?
Because they're trying to build an offense that can, quote-unquote, win now.
Without Sterling Shepard.
Without Sterling Shepard, with a defense that you're building a bridge for 2021 and 2022.
Yeah. So you're going to play this game without Shepard, without Tate, without Odell, I mean, the Bills are just going to feast on Evan Ingram and Saquon Barkley. That's what's going to happen. For the Giants to have any chance to win this game, we should flip this forward anyway. For the Giants to have any chance to win this game, Russell Shepard or Benny Fowler or Cody Latimer is going to have a monster game. Yeah. I'm not talking about 3 for 50 and a touchdown. I'm talking about 6 for 100 and a touchdown.
Right.
I'm talking about somebody
8 for 120 and a score.
I'm talking about somebody having basically the best game of their NFL career.
Well, Saquon Barkley is going to have 220 plus all-purpose yards, and he did it a couple times last year. I mean, you look at the Philly game; it obviously wasn't enough. I think he was over 200 in that game. Odell was on the field that day. The Redskin game, I think he busted out for 225 or more in that game with a couple
Mark
touchdowns.
Sanchez was on the field that day,
and so was Josh Johnson. yeah, exactly. And Josh Allen's way better than both of those guys. But that's what it's going to be. Ingram is going to have triple digits and double-digit targets. Yeah. Barkley's going to have to be the focal point that everybody had promised that he was going to be. And I don't even know if that's going to be enough, because if you watch that game and the Bills' defense, that's a very violent, stifling, strangling defense. And you saw what they did to Sam Darnold and the Jets in the second half. I don't see why it would be much different against the Giants on Sunday.
Let me ask you a question. Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones, or we're probably going to play this game a lot this season. This could be a feature. Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones, or Ed Oliver and Josh Allen. Giants passed them, both guys.
Both of them, yeah. See, I think, obviously you know how I feel about Saquon Barkley, and I have high hopes for Daniel Jones.
I think I would take Barkley and Jones.
I do too, because I think that overall Jones's ceiling might be higher than Josh Allen's. Josh Allen is obviously better now and going to get better over the next year or two. And Ed Oliver, I tweeted it the other day and I wrote about it in the spring. He was my number one defensive player. I thought he was a perfect fit for this team. And can you imagine if they were able to come away with Ed Oliver at 6, trade up? I don't even care. At this point, when you look at the rest of the draft class, I'll throw a hypothetical at you.
Bring it.
If you take DeAndre Baker out of this draft class, if you take O'Shane Ximenez out of this draft class, if you take a 5th-round pick out of this draft class, pick whichever one you want, those 3 players and a 2020 number 2 pick, if you could have Ed Oliver and Daniel Jones, would you make that trade?
So Ed Oliver and Daniel Jones
are your 2 picks, and you trade away your 2nd-round pick, which wound up being DeAndre Baker.
Okay.
You trade away O'Shane Ximenez, so you take in the 3rd,
and your 5th.
And your 5th-round pick. Connolly.
So, yeah, and then I still keep my 17 pick, so I get Dexter Lawrence too?
And you don't get Dexter Lawrence.
But you get 17 because you're taking Ed Oliver. You don't get Dexter.
Right.
So you get Montez Sweat?
Right.
Yes, I would make that trade.
Yeah, and I think that the Giants were trying to move up, but I would have given 3-4 picks to move up with the Jaguars at 7 to come away with both of those guys.
Yeah. Yeah, they passed on 2 guys named Josh Allen. Josh Allen of the Bills and Josh Allen of the Jaguars. And they didn't want either Josh Allen. And Josh Allen, the quarterback, had some interesting things to say, Matt. We had him on a teleconference. Nice enough kid to do the opposing media teleconference, which not every quarterback would do.
Yeah.
And he had some interesting things to say about his value of playing as a rookie, which, whether he knew it or not, was saying the Giants should be playing Daniel Jones because he knows Jones. He said really
met him at the Super Bowl. They have the same agent.
Really confident in what he's going to end up becoming for the Giants. And he was saying for his own development that being baptized by fire last year really helped him, because exactly what sports writers say all the time. It got his jitters out. It made him make his mistakes. Now he's seeing everything for the 2nd and 3rd time, so he knows, last time I made this mistake. And he did it in a lost season for the Bills, and now all of a sudden the Bills, who came in with low expectations, beat the Jets, who came in with high expectations. And maybe it's because Allen is in his 2nd year with McDermott, and Sam Darnold's starting over with Adam Gase.
And you look at the Bills; they bring in Devin Singletary. Only had 4 carries, but he was, I believe, a 3rd-round pick out of Iowa State. Really violent runner. Averaged 17.5 yards per carry against the Jets. They brought in John Brown, gave him to Josh Allen, and I liked him a lot coming out of Pittsburgh State. I thought he had the chance to be someone who could really take the cover off of defense. He had a big game in the opener. I think he caught a touchdown against New York when he was here on Sunday. So you give Allen a year of experience. You give him a couple of weapons. You give him a second year with the same head coach. And obviously you're seeing some of those dividends start to be paid. You can only hope, if you're a Giants fan, that at some point Daniel Jones gets on the field this year, and the weapons he has, I think everybody would take his supporting cast over Josh Allen's supporting cast with Saquon Barkley, Evan Ingram, and Sterling Shepard. Give him a year or 10 games or 15 games or 14 games with these guys, and I think next year you could be talking about the Giants being in the mix for at least a wild card.
You ready for the Daniel Jones mania on talk radio and newspapers and locker room if the Giants lose this game?
I've been born ready. Right? I mean, remember, I'm the guy who, in July, I'm in Disneyland with my wife and daughter, and I get the email from Robert Klemko. Hey, I'm surveying my favorite beat writers about who drafted rookie quarterbacks, when they're going to play. Can you give me 100 words on when Jones will start? Sure, let's go with Week 7 against Arizona. Easy landing spot at home. Secondary, half bye week after the Patriot game.
And I
wrote it on Monday morning, quarterback. And when did I adjust it to? Week 3 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
And I was back then I was saying week 15, and I only came up to week 7 where you were. Yeah. I think it's going to start if they lose. Some prediction.
I have the Bills winning this game because I don't think the Giants' offense is going to be able to pressure Allen, not going to be able to create turnovers, and I'm not sold on this Giants' offense scoring points. Not with what I saw in Dallas when you couldn't move the ball on third down. I have the Bills in this one. I think the score I gave you was 31-24.
Yeah, I have the Giants winning 21-20, though if Sterling Shepard doesn't play, I might have to revise that. Right now I have 21-20 Giants. I can't believe they're a home underdog to the Bills.
2.5 points, so almost a field goal, which means in reality Vegas views them as 5.5 point dogs, because usually it's a 3-point spread. A couple quick questions. Surveyed Twitter to get some questions for the end of the podcast here. Rapid fire. We just answered the first one from our good friend Evan Silva at Evan Silva. When are we going to see Danny Dimes? I say week 3. You say
7.
Week 7. At 27, his name is Will, said, how many players on defense would you say are in the top 10 in the league at their position? Zero. Because I think Janoris Jenkins is probably about
just
12 to 15, somewhere in that range. Nobody along the defensive line, and none of the linebackers.
And not Peppers.
Not Peppers, and certainly not what we saw out of DeAndre Baker. No. The final question that was submitted here, let me try to pull them up. I'd like to give the handle, but it's not showing up. What are the defensive changes that we see on Sunday? Corey Ballantyne, maybe. Ryan Connolly. Anyone else?
No, I don't think it'll be personnel changes. I think it'll be schematic changes. Maybe they blitz less, drop more guys in coverage, especially if Allen's going to get out of the pocket. I don't think it's too early, I think, to see any kind of dramatic personnel changes after it's very rarely you see something like Eric Flowers benched and cut after 2 games. I think they're going to stick with what they decided based on 9 months of research and OTAs and whatnot. 0-2, the Giants start 0-2 a lot. It's devastating to start 0-2 in the NFL.
Yeah, very difficult to come back to make the postseason. I don't think either one of us viewed this as a playoff team, but it's basically impossible to come back from 0-2.
Yeah, I mean, and 2007 Giants fans right now are thinking, we won the Super Bowl in 2007, we started 0-2. Michael Strahan, Justin Tuck, O.C. Human, you aren't walking through that door.
No, they're not. I think the change that I think you're going to start to see is you're going to see a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more of Ryan Connolly. Because I looked at Alex Ogletree in coverage.
Let's be serious. It's not going to change.
It's a 5th-round pick.
Yeah, he's not going to change it. He might play well, but he's not going to change the outcome of a football game.
No, one guy, even if he's an upgrade in coverage against a tight end or a running back, is not going to magically fix that defense. And Pat Shurmur hinted at personnel changes in the secondary. The only thing that you might do is less Hamilton, more Baker, and maybe instead of Ballantyne, maybe it's Ballantyne instead of Hamilton in that rotation.
Maybe some Julian Love, who got 0 snaps in that game. But less Hamilton, but again, I don't know that that's a cure-all for anything.
Yeah. Any final thoughts before we get out the door?
No, I mean, they are who we thought they were.
Yeah, no, I agree. Thank you, Dennis Green.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the Giants are the ones who are going to have to let themselves off the hook, and I don't know that happens this week.
Yeah, it's a very big week. It's as big a week 2 game as you could possibly have.
He's Ryan Dunleavy at RY Dunleavy. I'm Matt Lombardo at Matt Lombardo NFL on Twitter. Appreciate you listening. Appreciate you subscribing. Thanks for the questions, and we'll talk to you next week when we preview Week 3 against Tampa Bay and recap whatever happens in the home opener Week 2 Sunday afternoon against the Buffalo Bills.